we have been talking about work breakdown structure. Let's talk about task. Task is the smallest unit that we divide each activity into as per the work breakdown structure. Let's talk about some relationships between these tasks. Suppose we have two tasks. Now, two tasks can be related to each other in four ways. Uh, the relationship can be a finish to finish relationship. It can be a start to finish relationship. It can be a start to start relationship, or it can be a finish to start relationship. The majority of the cases follow a finish to start relationship. That is, once a task finishes, another task should start. That is a start to finish relationship. Start to start relationship and finish to finish relationship both follows a parallel execution kind of activity. Even start to finish might incur some parallel execution phenomenon. But start to finish, uh, we have observed a very few cases that involves a start to finish relationship. Such relationships are like, for example, activity B can start 2 days before A finishes if the lag is 2 days. Now let's talk about a simple problem. Here are a set of activities. That we have a set of seven activities and corresponding duration. How much time does each activity take? And what are the predecessors of each activity? The first predecessor and the second predecessor. Both of them are the immediate predecessors of the activity. For example, if we see A, activity A doesn't have a predecessor. So this is the network diagram for the uh, phenomenon mentioned here. A doesn't have a predecessor. Now, B has a predecessor called A. Activity A is the predecessor of activity B. So you can see that this is the activity B and A is the predecessor. I have also written the duration in the bel below each of the activity. We can see that activity C is having a predecessor called A. C is having a predecessor called A. Activity D is having a predecessor called B. B is the predecessor for D. Similarly, C and D are the predecessors for E. So this is activity E and C is a predecessor. Similarly, D is also a predecessor. So similarly, this is how we make a network diagram from a table. Uh, Once we have this network diagram that we prepare, then we can form how many paths are there in this network diagram. For example, how many loops are there? Sorry, how many paths are there? For example, here A, B, D, E, G is a path. A, B, D, G, E, G. A, B, D, E, G. See, the first path is A, B, D, E, G. Next path is A, C, E, G. A, C, E, G. See, A, C, E, G. A, C, E, G. Okay. Next path is uh, A, C, F, G. A, C, F, G. See, A, C, F, G. It is there. Now we also have a path called A, B, D, F, G. See, A, B, D, F, G. So similarly, we can define paths for each network diagram. After defining path, we should calculate the uh, amount of time that it takes for the activity to complete through each path. Now, if you see A, B, D, E, G, there are four paths, right? Now let's see how much time it takes to complete each path. To traverse through path one, it takes 38 minutes. Path 2 takes 35, path 3 again takes 38, and path 4 takes 35 minutes. So these are the duration. Now tell me, what will be the minimum duration that it will take so that this project will complete? Well, we can complete it. We can take A, B, D, F, G. We can take A, B, D, F, G. and complete it in 35 minutes. Wow. But then still the project is not complete, right? Because still 3 more minutes it will take to complete this path. A, B, D, E, G will take 3 more minutes to complete, right? So for the project to end, for the project to complete, minimum time that it requires is the maximum duration that it takes. In other words, the longest path in a project is the critical path in the project. Its time is the minimum time needed to complete the project. If an activity in the critical path gets delayed, the entire project gets delayed. If the project has to complete, it has to complete all the activities, right? At least minimum it will take 38 minutes. If say activities are traversed parallelly in all these paths, then minimum it will take 38 minutes so that so that the project will complete, right? The allowable delay in a critical path is 0. In this example that we have taken, we have two critical paths. So we have two paths that take 38 minutes, which is the maximum among the duration of paths taken in this network diagram. So now we had another path here. We had another path here, and it was taking time like 37 minutes. It took 37 minutes for another path to complete. See, now this 37 minutes will be called as allowable, will be called as near critical path. It is the allowable delay is close to that of the critical path. The path whose allowable delay is close to that of the critical path is called as a near critical path. So since we don't have such a path here, here we can say that the near critical path are path 2 and path 4, the 35-minute duration. These we have two near critical paths and two critical paths in this example. So we can also say that there are two critical paths and there are two non-critical paths in this example. Non-critical path is a critical path whose allowable delay is not 0. Now this diagram is called as activity on node. Why? Because activity is mentioned on the node. It is not mentioned in the arrow, right? It is mentioned in the junction of each arrow. Junction of each arrow is called as a node. So this type of representation of a network diagram is called activity on node diagram. Now we can have a corresponding activity on arrow diagram. Okay, activity on node, we can put an acronym as AON diagram. AON diagram. Okay. Now correspondingly, we can have an AOA diagram, which is a activity on uh, arrow. AOA diagram. In AOA diagram, we represent each activity in the arrow. So we have A, B, C, D. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 activities. So we will have 7 arrows. That arrow represents A. This arrow represents B. Then now this is the corresponding uh, activity on arrow diagram for the network diagram represented on the left. We can represent each node in this activity on arrow diagram as a event. We can represent by numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 events in this activity on arrow diagram. This one. So an event represents the start or end of an activity. The limiting factors of a project schedule are the minimum time each activity needs, the logical relationship between activities, the imposed deadlines, the resource dependencies. The critical path considers only logical dependency and the minimum time each activity needs. A critical path plus the resource dependency forms a critical chain. In order to make a schedule, we should know the WBS the predecessors, and the time estimates. In analyzing a network diagram, the first step is to find the critical path. Starting from the critical path, we build the critical chain. In the critical chain, we include the resource dependencies of each activity. The resource dependency is in our control. It can be managed but not at the cost of logical dependency. There are two types of time estimates: deterministic estimate of time and probabilistic estimate of time. The deterministic estimate of time is a one measure estimate. We can easily observe the activity and uh, track or observe the duration that an activity takes. That will be a deterministic estimate of time. But in probabilistic estimate of time, we make use of minimum three estimates of time. That is most likely time, most optimistic time, and most pessimistic time. Using these three estimates, we come to a single estimate by arriving three different probabilistic estimate of time. Sorry, by averaging three different probabilistic estimate of time. Given we have the most likely time, most optimistic time, and most pessimistic time, we can have the effective time by uh, summing up the most pessimistic time and the most optimistic time, and we should add four times the most likely time, the whole divided by 6. That is TP plus TO plus TL, most likely time, 4 into TL, whole divided by 6. Effective time is uh, the most pessimistic time plus most optimistic time plus 4 times most likely time by 6. Now, using these three time estimates, we can also find the variance of activity, variance of the time taken for each activity. The variance is calculated by the formula TP minus TO divided by 36. TP minus TO the whole square by 36. That is the variance of the time estimates. As we know, the square root of variance is standard deviation, and the sum of variance of individual activities forms the variance of that path. That is the variance of the time durations of that path. The advantage of using this method is that you will get the probability of completion of the project also. Now we do all these things for a proper plan, right? The two fundamental perspectives of a plan is the viability of a plan and the manageability of a plan. Viability of a plan depends on the time, resources, the cost, and the financial parameters, while the manageability of a plan depends on the right level of macro and micro detailing. It should not be so much broad, it should not be so much detailed, it neither should it be sketchy. The micro planning phase can be done by a bottom up approach. This is where we need a WBS. This is a detailed planning approach. Some of the methods that are used for this bottom up approach is parametric method or a work breakdown structure, etc. Top down approach is used for a preparation of budget. Usually the preparation cost is low for a top down approach. Top down approach is used for a micro planning phase. We don't need a WBS for a top down approach, but we need to summarize this approach. We are dealing with a lot of summaries when we talk about top down approach. Some methods used for top down approach include consensus method. This is a common agreement between team members. A group of people sit and discuss and reach a consensus based on escalation factors. Another method is ratio method. Here we talk about some percentages, and we talk about uh, we express quantities with respect to a common denominator. We will talk about fractions in this ratio method. This much fraction of activity A this much fraction of resources used in activity A will be required for activity B. So such kind of mathematics we will be using. Another method is apportion method. Portion method is uh, talking about portions. That is portioning the project variables with respect to factors like labor, resources, etc. This consensus method, ratio method, and apportion method, these are the analogous estimation methods, or also known as comparison methods. Next, we also have some other methods called function point method. Function point method is you with respect to functions. We make some functions and calculate the values for uh, various parameters using various functions. Another method for top-down approach is a learning curve method. That is, each time you learn with the learning curve. That is, if your learning curve is 50 percentage, first time you may take 60 minutes for completing a task. After that, in the second time, you will take 48 minutes. That is, sorry, 30 minutes. If your learning curve is 50 percentage, then the second time you will take 30 minutes, because first time you took 60 minutes. So second time you will take only half that time. That is 30 minutes for completing the task. Third time you will take half the 30 minutes. That is 15 minutes only to complete the task. Suppose your learning curve is 80 percentage and you took 60 minutes in the first time to complete an activity. Second time you will take only 48 minutes. That is 80 by 100 into 60 percentage. That is only 48 minutes will be taken for the second time, and the third time you will take only 38.8 minutes. That is 80 percentage of 48 minutes. So this method is called as learning curve method. This function point method and learning curve method are known as parametric estimation methods. Planning horizon increases, uncertainty increases, and the accuracy of estimation goes down. That is, longer the duration of estimation, the time horizon increases and the activity decreases. The activity of estimate depends on the type of estimate. The accuracy of estimate depends on the type of estimate. Factors influencing estimation include planning horizon, project duration, people nature, the project structure of the organization culture, etc. There are some laws that governs this estimation process. The first one is called Parkinson's. It says it says that work expands to make use of all the time available. This means that work will not complete before time, because even if the work completes before time, work won't be reported. It won't be reported that the work is completed before time, because there is a tendency that once you report that the work is completed before time, the next estimate will be planned according to that. The next estimate will plan that that activity will take only even lesser time. Another law of estimation is that project will accumulate delays and never accumulate gain. This is called as Goldratt's law. This means that the delays gets cumulative but the gain decreases. That is, delays get cumulative but gain decreases. Some reasons for this uh, law is that delayed pattern effect. That is, the new department, for example, we are transferring a project from operation from the project stage to the operation stage. There can be a delayed pattern effect that new department won't take charge. The operations department will not take charge until some processes are complete, or it can be due to the not reporting that a work is completed early. Another law is a student law. It is a tendency to do everything at the last moment. Now let's talk about some good practices in estimation. We need to do the estimation or perform the estimation at normal conditions. We should involve several people to estimate, use common time unit, and make the people doing the job do the estimate. The estimate shouldn't be optimistic or pessimistic. Independence should be assumed while estimating. That is, first estimate should be independent, and then slowly, one by one, pull in dependency to the estimate. Always, you should test the assumptions while doing estimate. Proper risk assessment should be planned and performed. There should be proper responsibility attribution, and we should also consider uncertainties while estimating. Uncertainties may include unexpected meetings, vacation, rework, maybe a change in learning curve, etc. We cannot estimate with the 100 percentage probability that everything will go right. So the best thing that we can do is we could estimate with a 80 percentage possibility that everything will go right and a 20 percentage possibility that things will go wrong. This is better than a 50-50 possibility. There should be a very low margin of error in estimates. Now let's talk about a concept called as slack. Slack is an allowable delay of an activity or a path. Critical path operates at zero slack. Every activity in a critical path should start at a planned time and end at the planned time. You can have a slack for a path and a slack for an activity. Suppose in this particular example, we have 7 activities. Suppose activity A starts at 0 minutes and it completes at uh, 21 minutes. Here, this 0 minutes is called as early start time and 21 minutes is called as early finish time. We will go for a forward pass and we will determine the early start and early finish time for each activity. Here, for activity B, which starts after activity A, it can start at the 22nd minute. 22nd minute. 22nd minute it starts and it takes 5 minutes to complete. That is, you complete at 27th minute. Activity D starts after activity B. So it can start at the 27th minute. So there is a small mistake. This is 21st. When activity A finishes at the 21st minute, activity B can start at the 21st minute and it can end at 26th minute. Right. Now activity D can start at 26th minute and it can end at 28th minute. Now activity E can start after B and C completes. Now let's talk about C. Activities C can start after activity A, which means activity C can also start at 21st minute. And activity C takes 7 minutes, which means it can complete at 28 minutes, right? I'll represent all the early start and early finish times with a green color. I've pulled the C's early start and early finish a little bit down for clarity. Now let's talk about E. E starts after C and D completes, which means it can start at the 28th minute. So E starts at 28th minute and it finishes at 33rd minute. 33rd minute. And F can also start after C and D, which means F also start at the 28th minute and it finishes at uh, 36th minute. And I'm indicating both with the green. Now activity G will start at the 36th minute because G should wait for both F and E to get completed. So it will start at the 36th minute and it will finish after 2 minutes, which means it will finish at the 38th minute. What is our critical path duration? 30, 38, right? Yeah, that is the 38 here. Now, now we finishes the forward path. Let's compute the reverse path. That is, if the activity is to finish at the 38th minute, when should G start? G should start at the uh, at G should start latest by 36th minute, right? Because the latest finish of activity G is 38. So it should start latest by 36th minute, right? I'll represent this with the red color. Now, similarly, activity E, uh, it should finish at 33rd early finish time. So at latest start and latest finish times of activity E are, since G is only going to start at 36th minute, E can even finish at 36th minute, right? That is the latest finish time of activity E. Now, if E activity is to finish at 36th minute, what is the latest start of activity E? That is 36 minus of 5. That is 31. Okay. Similarly, activity F, it should finish at 36th minute. That means it should start at the 28th minute uh, because it's having a duration of 8 minutes. All right. Now, if this is the case, now what about activity D and activity C? Activity D, it should latest finish by 28th minute because activity F has to start at the 28th minute. Therefore, activity D should latest finish by 28th minute, which means it should start by 26th minute. That means this early start and the uh, latest start of activity D is the same. That means there is no slack for activity D. Similarly, activity C also should latest finish by 28 minute, and activity C also should latest start by the 21st minute. And similarly, activity B and activity A also has the same uh, latest start and latest finish time. Okay. Having calculated all the early start, early finish, latest start and latest finish times, now we know that activity A has the early start of 0th minute and early finish of 28th minute. Activity A has the latest start of 0th minute and latest finish of 28th minute. Slack is calculated by either we can calculate either we can calculate it by taking the difference of early start minus of latest start, or we can also say that it is equal to latest finish minus of early finish. Not early start minus, it is latest start minus early finish. Now, what does this mean? Activity A, the slack of activity A is 0 because 0 minus 0, 21 minus 21 is 0. Now, looking at activity B, it also has a slack of 0. Activity D is also having a slack of 0. Activity C is also having a slack of 0. So these could be in critical path. If an activity is having slack of 0, it could be in critical path. Now, talking about activity F and E, activity F is not having a slack. Slack of activity F is 0, but activity E has a slack of 3 minutes because it is 31 minus of 28. Right. Activity E has a slack of 3 minutes. Activity G has a slack of 0, which means the path that includes activity E is not in critical path because critical path cannot tolerate a slack. Now, the early start of a activity is the earliest time that an activity should start. Early finish is the earliest time that an activity should finish. The latest finish is the latest time that an activity should finish. And the latest start is the latest time that an activity should start. But still, a project is completed on time. Now, there is another concept called as float. Float is also an allowable delay, but it is created artificially. Slack is natural, but float is created. Slack is a delay that occurs naturally due to the logical dependencies of the activity. But float is a delay that we create to account for some unexpected risk or some unexpected phenomena that could delay the activity. It is like we consider that we take, uh, we might take this much time. It is like we keep a reserve time for the safe completion of the activity. We do not have a control over the logical dependency of an activity, but we have control over the resource dependency of an activity. Slack comes out of logical dependency. Putting a float on a path gives more flexibility. Put it at the end of a path rather than at the end of an activity so that we can account for the duration of the path. Each activity might not need a float, but a path altogether we might need a float. If we put a float at the end of an activity, only the activity will get that benefit of float. Any time delay on the path of a project has an irreversible recovery. It also has a cascading effect on the factors like on other factors like budget and resourcing. A delay caused in a project might result in a scarcity of resources or a scarcity of funds. The activities might become costly because of a delay that incurred in one task. Because the market always changes, economics changes. Therefore, we can have a time overrun, budget overrun, or an unavailability of resource, etc. Crucial activities involved in project time management process are defining activities, sequencing activities, estimating activity and resources, estimating the duration of activities, developing the schedule. Now, these activities that I mentioned are to be done in the planning phase. Now, there is another activity called controlling the schedule that is to be done in the monitoring and controlling phase. Now, why would things go wrong when we estimate the duration of activities in a project? Things go wrong due to three reasons. One, special cause variation. These are the variation caused not by chance but by ignorance. The remedy for this kind of variation is a proper risk analysis and proper resolution of risk events. Another kind of problem that can occur during the duration estimation is common cause variation. This is some kind of variation that can occur by chance. It can be resolved by using a PERT, a probabilistic program evaluation and review technique. PERT is a solution for this common cause variation. Some examples may be Monte Carlo simulation. Uh, we can assign a project buffer. Another kind of problem that can occur after the duration estimation is merging multiple predecessors. To account for the delays and risks in merging multiple predecessors, we can add milestones and we can add a feeding buffer to manage multiple predecessors. In project management, feeding buffer protects the critical chain from delays or disruption caused by non-critical chain. It is a time reserve placed between the end of a non-critical chain and the start of a critical chain task, allowing for variability in non-critical chain without impacting the critical path's timeline. We can do a reverse phase schedule. We can even manage this with the float. We can add in a float in the network diagram. When you see an activity with multiple predecessors, you can put buffer for a particular activity that called multiple predecessors. This buffer is called as feeding buffer. Now, another problem that can occur during the project duration estimation is queuing. Uh, the remedy for this problem is to have a staggered project start delay. That is, don't start many activities at the same time. Adding proper resource buffer and resource leveling techniques will help you navigate the queuing issue. Multitasking can be another problem that can be mediated through uh, remediated through proper prioritization of projects and carefully authorizing the start of non-critical activities. Another problem in duration estimation is not reporting the early completion of activities. This may be due to the project culture or the project communication plan. We can improve the culture, organization culture, and the project culture, or we can improve the situation with having more contract incentives. If you complete the activity before time, you will get some incentive. This way, we can improve the progress reporting. PERT and CPM are both project management tools used for scheduling and controlling tasks. We already discussed about both critical path method, that is CPM, and PERT, that is program evaluation and review technique. PERT is the one where we dealt with uh, pre-time estimation and probabilistic estimation, etc. We will see one more problem regarding that. CPM focuses on identifying the critical path, the longest sequence of tasks, and prioritizing them for resource allocation. PERT, on the other hand, handles projects with uncertainties by incorporating optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic time estimates for each activity. Now, PERT has a benefit over CPM because there is a value addition over PERT because we have a three time estimation. We have three time estimates. We can say the time with 100% confidence of task completion. The standard deviation of a path is less, we can say that it's a critical path. Critical task has the most influence in completing the project. Therefore, CPM is a deterministic method, whereas PERT is a probabilistic method. There is a problem with PERT. Uh, Here you can see a list of 7 activities. Their optimistic time, most likely time, and pessimistic time. A is the optimistic time, M is the most likely time, and B is the pessimistic time. Now, also we have the expected time, uh, which is done, which is calculated using the formula. Uh, this optimistic time plus pessimistic time plus 4 times most likely time, the whole divided by 6. Now we also have the activity variance. We have talked about how to calculate it. It is calculated by uh, calculating optimistic time minus pessimistic time divided by 6, the whole square. Now we have also the immediate predecessors of all these activities. Based on this table, we can formulate the network diagram. How to formulate the network diagram? We have A, then we have we'll formulate the activity on node diagram. We have A, which doesn't have a predecessor. We have B, which has a predecessor called A. Now we have C, which has a predecessor called A. Now we have D, which has a predecessor called B. Now we have E with predecessors C and D. C and D is the predecessor for E. And we have F with predecessors C and D. Similarly, right? Now we have G with predecessors E and F. All right. Now we can just add the arrows. C has a predecessor. Sorry, E has a predecessor. E has a predecessor. C and D. C and D are the predecessor. Okay, sorry. C and D are the predecessor for E and F, right? Yes. So we can draw a network diagram like this for this question, this table. Now after that, we can calculate the early start, early finish, and latest start and latest finish times. And based on that, we can calculate the critical path and activity variance. So here, when we write the normal time or the duration taken for A, we can use the expected time. We can use 21 here. I think this sums up to the previous question. Previous question, it's the same network diagram, it's the same time estimation. So that's how it was derived. Now let's talk about another example. Here in this program, in this project, we can draw the network diagram first. And draw the network diagram for this. There is something called as A, and without a predecessor. After that, we have B with A as a predecessor. Then we have C with A as a predecessor. Then we have D with A as a predecessor. And then we have E with B and C as predecessors. E with B and C as predecessors. And then we have F with D and C as predecessors. With D and C as predecessors. D and C. So let me interchange this. D and C as predecessors. We have F, and then we have G with E and F as predecessors, right? So this is how the network diagram will look like. Here, here also you can find four paths: A, D, F, G, A, C, E, G, A, C, A, B, E, G, and A, C, F, G. Now this table on the right side shows the normal path and the normal time, crash time, and the crash cost. It also shows the crash cost per day. So let's assign the normal time for each activity. Now adding up all these normal times for the each path, you can see that the total duration for each path is like this. A, B, E, G will add up to 25. A, C, E, G will add up to 19. A, C, F, G will add up to 20. And A, D, F, G will add up to 24. So 25 is the critical path now because it's having the longest. It is a minimum. It is the maximum time uh, that it will take, and now it is a minimum time the project needs to complete, right? So it also says that the direct cost involved in executing this project is $2,075. This table talks about the possibility called as crashing. Crashing is a process of fast tracking or expediting a project by a purposeful investment in resources. It is a process in resourcing of subprocess. The processes involved in resourcing a subprocess are estimating the resource needs, identifying the resources, and determining the resource availability. After that, we need to make a staffing management plan, and we need to schedule the resources, and we need to assign the resources. When we talk about scheduling resources, we have to plan the resources with respect to the requirement. 1/3 of the time in project management goes with resourcing challenges. There are two types of resourcing challenges. One is availability challenge. Availability challenge in resourcing is a matter of utilization. Another resource challenge is adequacy challenge. Adequacy challenge is always due to the fact that the resources that we allocated are not adequate. But availability challenge is a different uh, scenario altogether. It is a fact that we have all the resources, but the resources are not available at the moment. It may occur due to unforeseen resource dependencies and result in newer critical path. It can also happen due to resource limitations and bottlenecks. Having a realistic deadline and having a proper resource flexibility may reduce the availability challenge to an extent. Availability challenge arises from inefficient utilization of resources. This is a problem of technical and behavioral skills in resourcing. Both these challenges will have a cost impact. One remedy might be an outsourcing plan, but we cannot apply that for all the scenarios. So, do we have a solution for the resourcing challenges? Yes, one solution is to design a buffer feeding or a feeding buffer. We can include a resource buffer, we can include a time buffer. We need to make sure that the resource requirement does not exceed resource availability. Resource overload might can happen because of either adequacy challenge or an availability challenge. Solutions for resourcing challenges include splitting of activities, that is, breaking up of big activities into smaller activities. Another one is merging of activities, that is, merging smaller activities into a single activity. Maybe reassignment of activities, multitasking, multi-skilling, parallel execution of activities using techniques like start to start, finish to finish, etc. Acquiring or borrowing resources, reducing the scope and extent of schedule, outsourcing, informing the sponsor of the overload. We can always add more resources. We can make the resources work overtime usage and resource. We can have resources work for part time. We can include more resources for part time. We can find ways to expedite activities. One way to expedite activity is through crashing. After doing any of these techniques, if you are able to bring the critical path to the normalcy, then it's a time constraint project. Time constraint project is when the time is fixed. You might remember. But if we focus on act, but in time constraint projects, we focus on activity here. If you can't bring the, uh, you can't bring back or compensate the delays on critical path, then it's a resource constraint project. Resource leveling is a solution for availability challenge. Using resource leveling, we can delay the non-critical activity purposefully to the extent of slack. We can even out the demand and use a stable demand pattern. We can minimize the fluctuations in resource demand. We can look at the utilization from the full period or life cycle perspective, and we can adopt any method where the utilization improves. We can use the entire slack for managing the resource challenge. While we do the resource leveling, we will have to do multitasking. Will New critical paths might be created, old critical paths might become non-critical. We might have a loss of flexibility due to slack utilization, etc. Now, there is a solution for adequacy challenge. The solution for adequacy challenge is the critical chain project management, also called as CCPM. It is also called as resource constraint scheduling, RCS. It works on priorities and allocate the resources. It identifies the most critical resource as a bottleneck and prioritize those activities with minimum slack. It reduces the number of projects doing in parallel. That is, it focuses on each activity. It locks in the resources. It adds slack at the end of project and exploit the critical resources. This is a solution where multitasking is to be minimized or controlled. There is a difference between critical path and critical chain method. Critical path method only considers the logical dependency between the activities. Critical chain method also addresses the resourcing dependency and the logical dependency of the activities. The critical chain is considered as the longest string of dependency. CCPM puts specific buffer for critical chain and it expedites the activities. That is, it finishes the work early and pass on to the next worker. In critical path method, the focus is on task completion. We don't use buffer in critical path method. There is slack instead of buffer, and we use less flexible and rigid technique. CPM talks all about logical dependency. We can use a DuPont analysis. While for critical chain project management, the focus is on task scheduling or task sequencing. We use feeding buffer, and here we don't use a slack. Here we use more flexibility and it accounts for uncertainty. This addresses logical and resourcing dependencies of activities. So as we discussed, crashing is also a method of expediting or fast tracking a project by purposeful investment in resources. And when we talk about crashing, it's an investment and we are looking at a return. It involves a cost. Certain activities are performed at faster rate than the normal pace. The total cost involved in crashing will be equal to the direct cost plus indirect cost plus the opportunity cost. Crashing definitely leads to an increase in the direct cost. It should be compensated by a reduction in the indirect cost and opportunity cost. The crashing is acceptable only as long as the total cost comes down. Now, why should we do crashing? To avoid unforeseen delays, to avoid penalties, to incentivize the completing of task before time, that is early task completion. When we have a high overhead cost, if we want a fast completion, we might need to expedite a project, crash some activities. Maybe while developing a product, the time to market is a real thing. To prevent the competitors from launching the product before our launch date, we might need to expedite some activities and crash the activities and make the project finish at a early time. We might need to prepone the deadline of launch. That might lead to a technological advantage, or that might lead to a reduction in the opportunity cost, or it might be due to an imposed deadline. Now there are some rules in crashing. The first one is rule one is the lowest crash cost per unit should be crashed first. Second rule is crash only critical path activity. Third rule is crash activity one by one and day by day. I mean unit by unit. Rule 4 is if we have multiple critical path, we need to simultaneously crash multiple critical path activities. Rule 5 is the moment the total cost goes up, stop crashing. Now what we see on screen is a time cost crash schedule. Now if we see here, this is a crashing time table and it is a crashing cost table. Our goal is to find up to which level can we crash the project. So without crashing, we can see that critical path duration is 25. The direct cost is 1027 here. Sorry, 2075. 2075. There is no crash cost and there is not the total cost is 2075. Okay. Now looking at the time, uh, without crashing, the duration is 25 for the critical path, and these are all the other critical, all the other non-critical paths. And these are the uh, time periods for each path. Now, our first choice is to crash B because B is in the critical path and it has the lowest cost. The crash cost per day is 50 rupees, $50. So let's calculate the duration if we crash B. Crash B by one day. How many days can we crash B? The crash time is 5 and the normal time is 8, which means we can crash by 3 days. But we have to crash it one by one. So let's crash B by one day. By one day. The time duration will be 24. This doesn't have B, so it's 19. It's 20. And this one also doesn't have B, so it's 24. So we have two critical paths when we crashed B for one day. Now, what is the cost involved in crashing B for one day? The critical path is 24 minutes. The direct cost is 2075. The crashing cost is $50, and therefore the total cost is 2125. Now let's uh, now what should we crash next? Now the critical path is, can just copy this here. No, no. We can just reduce this normal time to 7 and see what's the critical path. See, these two are the critical path. A, B, E, G and A, D, F, G are the critical path in the new scenario. Let's crash B and F because B and F both are in critical path. B is in the critical path of A, B, E, G and F is in the critical path of A, D, F, G. You can crash both of the activities by one day. Uh, and both of these activities are having the least cost of crashing. So let's crash B and F. B and F. If we crash both by one day, this is reduced. First one, A, B, E, G gets reduced by 23, B and F. So this is unchanged. A, C, F, G gets reduced by one day, 19, and A, D, F, G gets reduced by one day, which means the critical path is the same, A, B, E, G and A, D, F, G. Now we can just reduce this and see what are the critical path. 6, and if we reduce the days time of F also, now we can see that the critical path is A, B, E, G and A, D, F, G. Let's talk about the cost of crashing B and F. The total critical path duration is 23. The cost is the direct cost is 2075 and the crashing cost is 125 because it's 50 plus 25 plus 50. So that is 125. 125. This 50 plus the new 50 plus 25. That is 125. Now the total is 2200. Okay. Next, let's look about what to crash. We have A, B, E, G and A, D, F, G as the critical paths. Now, why don't we crash B and D? B and D. B and D has both are in the critical path and both are having the minimum uh, crash cost per day because our F can be crashed only by one day. Okay, the normal time is 4 time units, and crash time is 3 time units. So only until 3 time units can we crash. Only one time unit can we crash activity F. So now let's move to crashing B and D. All right, B and D by one day. Okay, when we crash B and D by one day, the critical time will be 22 for the first one, B and D, right? This doesn't change. This one also doesn't change. 19, B and D, right? So this one changes by 22. And therefore the critical path duration is the same, 22. Okay, B and D, right? B and D, B and D. So now the critical path is still the same, A, B, E, G and A, D, F, G. Now the cost involved for this iteration is the direct cost is 2075. The crashing cost is 275 because it's 125 plus 50 plus 100, right? Uh, that is a sorry. 275 is here, and this is 2075. Now the total cost is 2350. Given this, we have crashed it to a duration of 22. Our project will complete in 22 time units at this time, at this point of time. Okay. Now let's crash another activity. Can we crash B further? No, because we have crashed B to 3 time units. So that is the maximum we can crash B. Now coming to D, D can be crashed to 2 more time units. but D is not in all both the critical path. The only activity that can be crashed and that is in both the critical paths is G, and G has a cost of $200. So let's crash G. If we crash G, what happens? If we crash G, everything reduces to 1 time units. All the path durations will reduce to 1 time units because it's a mandatory activity. Now the cost. Now let's calculate the cost. Here the critical path duration for this iteration is 21 and the direct cost is 2075 and the crashing cost is 475 because it's 275 plus 200, 475. Now the total is this one plus this one, 200 and 2550. Now in this project there is not a word given about opportunity cost and indirect cost. Therefore the total cost is not reducing. It is only increasing from 2075. It is increasing to 200, 2550. Now there is one more possibility of crashing in this example where we can crash activities E and D again. Crashing E and D. Okay, it will reduce the critical path activities 1 unit. 20 E and D. It will reduce most of the durations except this one. ACFG doesn't get affected by this crashing. Uh, this Both the critical paths will get reduced by 1 time unit, the duration. Now the cost of this crashing activity will be 2075. The crashing cost is 725 and the total cost is 2095. Sorry, it should be something wrong. Huh, it's not right. It's 2800. That is the crashing cost. A full crash schedule is the schedule like this. We will have two tables like this indicating the time and the cost, and it talks about the project in a situation where it cannot be crashed beyond that point. For example, in this project, after this point, we cannot crash this project further because either after crashing from this point, uh, it the uh, project won't be crashed from both the critical paths. Only one critical path can be crashed at that time. So that is not justified. Here we can see that the total cost has increased from the normal scenario because we don't have a consideration for indirect cost and opportunity cost. Now let's say for each crashing, the opportunity cost, each crashing by 1 day, the opportunity cost reduces by $100. In this scenario, we can find an optimal crashing schedule. We just have to do this. We just have to reduce $100 whenever we crash each day. This is equal to this one minus $100. So here you can see that uh, it started from 2075 without crashing, and the total cost reduced to 2025 after crashing the first point, and when we crash the second one, the total cost increased to 2100. So maybe we can say that this one or this one, or maybe we can say that crashing the first one, crashing B by 1 day is the optimal crashing schedule, because when we crash B and F the second time for the crashing, the total cost is increasing from the uh, initial cost while there is no crashing, because 2100 is greater than 2075. Therefore, we can stop it at this point. That is crashing B. If we have an opportunity cost where, or an indirect cost where we can save $100 whenever we crash an activity by a day, this is how the crashing schedule works. Now, this brings us to a concept called diminishing margin of utility. It is a technique of calculating the optimum crashing plan as per the incremental cost savings, like we just did here in this case, by including an opportunity cost or an indirect cost. This one. Now, this is another example of using the PERT, where we have another set of activity. This is the network diagram for this particular problem. Uh, Here we have each activity, and each activity has an optimistic time, most likely time, and a pessimistic time. And using these three activities, we calculated the mean, that is expected time, and the variance. Variance, we know the formula for each of these parameters, mean and variance. So we calculated the mean and variance. After that, we mentioned that this what is the projected completion time? That is, what is the likelihood of completing the project in 17 or less time units? Now, looking at this network diagram, you can infer that there are four paths for completion of this project: BEGH, ACFH, ADFH, and ADGH. Correspondingly, we have these time periods for each activities, and we have the total time for uh, calculated for each path. So, how did we calculate this? This time is taken from the expected time. This is the mean time or the expected time, which is calculated based on the pessimistic time, optimistic time, and the most likely time. So, according to that, we calculated the average path time, and in another table, we calculated the variance for each activity in that path. And uh, summing that, we calculated the variance of that each path. We summed up the we summed up the we summed up the activity variances for each path and calculated the variance of each path. Further, we calculated the z value. How did we calculate the z value? The z value is t minus mean by square root of variance. Now, from the probability distribution table, according to this z value, we found out uh, the corresponding values for the normal distribution. Further, we multiplied all these probabilities to calculate the final probability, to find out the probability that what is the probability that the project will get completed before 7 time units, and we calculated that it is 91.4 units. Now let's talk a little about uh, project costing. Budget and cash flow cannot exist, one cannot exist without the other. That is, budget and cash flow should always coexist. Three activities in project costing are preparing the budget, preparing the cash flow, and preparing the funding. Pre- Preparing the budget involves post budgeting in the project budgeting. It has sub processes like planning the budget, estimating the budget, preparing the budget, and controlling the budget. Cash flow talks about timing and synchronizing inflows and outflows. Budget talks about what you need and what is the cost involved for what you need. When you overrun the cost, impact is on cost, time, and resources. There are four types of cost estimate in project: the order of magnitude, ballpark estimate, preliminary cost estimate, and a definitive cost estimate. These four types of cost estimates differ in six aspects. First one is, when in life cycle is these four types of cost estimating used? What kind of decision can be taken by using these cost estimates? What is the level of accuracy? What is the method of estimation? What is the cost involved in estimation, and what is the level of aggregation when we use each of these type of cost estimates? Order of magnitude method is used in the early phases of the project life cycle, especially in the pre-initiation phase. Example for selecting the projects. Its accuracy is usually low. We can say its accuracy is like plus or minus 40 percentage. It's the first set of decisions that you can make in a project. We use the analogous cost estimation for this order of magnitude method. We consider the historical estimates plus some new realities. Analogous estimation talks about the similarities with other projects. It is a top down estimation method or an aggregation of estimate method. Here, the cost of estimation is low. Next one is ballpark estimate. After pre-initiation and before pre-initiation, this kind of estimation can be used. Its accuracy is plus or minus 30 percentage, still low. Uh, it's the next set of decisions after the first decision gate, that is a pre-initiation phase. We use the parametric estimation method in this ballpark estimation. We can use multiple variables. It is another aggregate estimation method. With a level of aggregation comes down. In this method, the level of disaggregation comes up compared to the order of magnitude method. Next is the preliminary estimation method. Here, the budget authorization decision can be taken. It is also a parametric cost estimation method with an accuracy of plus or minus 20 percentage. Here, the cost of estimation is little more, and we have a less aggregated and more disaggregated estimate. It is neither a top down nor a bottom up approach because it's a mix of both approaches. It's used in the macro planning phase. Coming to the definitive estimation, cost estimation method, it is used in assigning the cost to each activity and disaggregating the cost decisions. It's having an accuracy of plus or minus 10 percentage. The cost of making a definitive cost estimate is very high, and the WBS, it is a WBS based method. It's a very highly disaggregated estimate, and it is used in micro planning and execution phase. Project cost management process involves three steps: estimating the cost, determining the budget, and controlling the cost. Controlling the cost is a basis in determining the budget. When we talk about cost estimation, we have to talk about the type of cost, the timing and accuracy of the cost estimate, the method of estimating, and the specific cost estimation issues. Different types of project costs include fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed cost is a volume independent quantity, whereas a variable cost is a volume dependent quantity. Whether or not to incur is not a choice when we talk about fixed cost, but variable cost, we have control over how much to incur and how much to spend. Another classification of cost is direct cost versus indirect cost. Indirect cost is like an overhead cost. Another classification of cost is recurring cost versus non-recurring cost. This depends on the frequency of uh, incurring of this cost. Recurring cost is a most frequent cost, whereas non-recurring cost is a non-frequent cost. Another classification is regular cost versus expedited cost. Expedited cost is a cost of crashing and speeding up something. Another classification of cost is lease versus purchase. That is whether to rent or to buy something. Another type of cost is the labor cost versus material cost. Maybe another type is estimate versus contingency reserve. When you factor cost in project, risk of the non-known type should also be considered. We keep reserves for all other types of risk. We keep a contingency reserve for known unknown and unknown known risk, whereas we keep a management reserve for unknown unknown risk. Some issues that can occur in project cost estimation include a lack of supporting details. That is a backup for estimate and its level of details. Another issue may be the causes of variation. That is a random variation or an assignable variation. Random variation occurs by chance. That is, they are unexplainable, whereas assignable variations are explainable completely. Another issue in project costing is vendor bid analysis. That is, bringing the cost dimensions to every aspect, not limiting to total cost. We can perform proper value engineering to increase the benefits by minimizing the retaining cost. While performing the cost analysis in a project, we need to consider the activity based costing. That is, the price that we see for any activity will have two portions. That is, it has a cost part and it has a margin part. Again, this cost will be split up into several heads like average labor, average material and input cost, average overhead cost, etc. There is something called as the total cost of ownership. The total cost of ownership is not the total cost of buying. There are three phases in the total cost of ownership. Uh, First one is pre-acquisition cost, second one is acquisition cost, and third one is a post-acquisition cost. When we perform the traditional costing approach, some customers might get benefited at the cost of others. But the moment you have a WBS, that is a work breakdown structure, you can go for an activity based costing. That is charging the clients based on the resource consumption. Another type of costing is life cycle costing. That is from cradle to graveyard. We consider the cost of performing this project. We need to, of course, consider the time value of money, the IRR, NPR, BCR, payback. But payback does not consider the time value of money. We need to, of course, consider the international currency fluctuations. Two main basic sources of project financing is debt and equity. The project capital structure focuses on how much to focus on debt and how much to focus on equity. Debt includes loans and other cash transfers, whereas includes preference issues and public issues, right issues, etc. There is also a third type of project financing called as special instruments. Debt is known to be less costly, but has a more risk factor because repayment is a must. Debt holders will get their shares first. They can even wipe off a project. Equity is costly, but it's not risky. Equity is the easier option because dividend payment is not an obligation. Now, when to go for what? We go for a higher financial risk when business risk is less, and we go for low financial risk when business risk is more. If you want debt, you need to prove to people your profit. If you want to have equity, you need to prove to people your growth. As simple as that. Aggregation of project budget is a plot of WBS versus time with the budget amount in the Cartesian plane. Let's answer three questions. Why, what, and how can we monitor the results of a project? Why? Because we don't want cost overrun. Uh, why? Because we should make sure that the execution happens without a challenge. Why? Because there might be something that goes wrong. What should we monitor? Time, cost, resources, quality, scope, risk, changes, milestones, supplier performance, etc. Now, how can we monitor the results of a project? Answer is tools. We have various tools to monitor the uh, progress of a project. We usually keep a project dashboard that keeps the important parameters and variables that are important to the project. We call it the project war room. Different project performance matrices are dynamically monitored. A charter, WPS, quality plan, dashboard, resource plan, etc. are the outputs of a monitoring plan, project review meetings, etc. A popularly used quantitative tool for monitoring and control is earned value management or earned value analysis. Besides that, critical path monitoring, CCPM, risk management plan, these are all project performance monitoring tools. But two types of controls that we can set in a project: a no-go control and a steering control. No-go control, for example, charter is something that we cannot proceed the project further without. We cannot go forward with the project without having a project charter. We just can't move forward. Now let's talk about earned value management. Earned value analysis, also known as the earned value management, is a technique used to evaluate a project's performance in terms of scope, time, and cost. It integrates these three aspects to give a comprehensive view of the project health. Now, the key terms in EVA, that is uh, earned value analysis, is planned value. First one is planned value, PV. PV, also called as the budgeted cost of work scheduled, BCWS, is an estimated value of the work planned to be complete by a specific time. Earned value, EV, is also called as a budgeted cost of work performed, BCWP. It is a value of the actual work completed at a given point. Actual cost, AC, is the also called as an actual cost of work performed, ACWP. It's a real cost incurred for the performed work at that time. That is the actual cost of work performed. Now let's talk about the relationships between these variables. So first one is cost variance, CV. CV is the cost variance and its formula is CV is equal to EV minus AC. We know EV is earned value and AC is actual value. It indicates if you are under or over the budget. If we have a positive cost variance, it means that we are under budget. If we have a negative cost variance, it means that we are over budget. Now, talking about the schedule variance, that is SV, uh, SV is equal to EV minus PV. That is, it shows if you are ahead or behind of the schedule. If we have a positive schedule variance, that means that the project is ahead of schedule. A negative schedule variance means we are behind schedule. This is the schedule. Uh, SV is equal to EV minus PV. Now talking about the cost performance index, CPI. CPI is equal to EV by AC. It is a measure of cost efficiency. CPI, if it is greater than 1, the project is efficient. If CPI is less than 1, the project is inefficient. Let's talk about schedule performance in SPI, schedule performance index. SPI is equal to EV by PV, that is earned value divided by planned value. It is a measure of schedule efficiency. If SPI is greater than 1, that means we are ahead of schedule. And if SPI is less than 1, that means we are behind schedule. Another concept is estimate at completion, EAC. EAC is equal to BAC by CPI. That is a basic formula. It is a forecast of the total cost at the project end. BAC is the project budget. CPI is the cost performance index. So, the estimated cost at completion is the project budget by cost performance index. This is a forecast of the total cost at completion. If things go like this much amount will be taken at the completion of the project. Next topic is variance at completion. VAC is equal to BAC minus of EAC. This talks about the expected cost savings or overruns. Variance of cost at completion equals the project budget minus the estimated cost at completion. Now let's take an example. Suppose we have a 6-month project. The budget at completion is 6 lakhs rupees. At the end of month 3, the planned value is 3 lakhs. The earned value is 2 lakhs 50,000 and the actual value is 2 lakhs 80,000. What is the cost variance? Cost variance is 2 lakhs 50,000 minus 2 lakhs 80,000. That is the earned value minus actual cost. That is a negative value. That is minus 30,000 rupees, which means that that project is over budget. Now, what is the schedule variance? Schedule variance is 2,50,000 minus 3 lakhs. That is also a negative value, minus 50,000. That means this project is behind schedule. What is the cost performance index? 2 lakhs 50,000 divided by 2 lakhs 80,000. That is 0.89. That is earned value divided by actual cost. Now 0.89 is less than 1. That is the project is less efficient. Now what about the schedule performance index? Schedule performance index is 2 lakh 50,000 divided by 3 lakhs. Earned value divided by planned value. That is equal to 0.83, which means the project is lagging schedule. The project is lagging behind the schedule. Now the estimated cost at completion is 6 lakhs divided by 0.89. EAC is equal to BAC by CPI. That is the project budget divided by the cost performance index. That equals estimated cost at completion. That is that if things go like this, we will take this much amount. We will have to incur this much amount. 6 lakhs divided by 0.89 is equal to 6 lakhs 74,157. The project was planned for 6 lakhs rupees, but it is supposed to incur 6 lakhs 74,157 rupees if things go like this. What about the variance at completion? It's simply 6 lakhs minus 6 lakhs minus, sorry, the variance at completion is just the difference between the project budget and the estimated cost at completion. That is the difference between 6 lakhs and 6 lakhs 74,000 rupees. So it is 74,157. That is a negative value, which means the project is overrun. That means we have a projected overrun of 74,157 rupees. The advantages of having an earned value analysis is that we can have an early warning system. There is an objective performance measurement. There is an integrated view of cost, scope, and time. It supports informed decision making. The limitation is that it requires accurate and timely data. There is this may not reflect the quality or the customer satisfaction, and this process is a little complex for small or agile projects. Earned value analysis is a powerful tool for monitoring projects. Now, there are also some other factors like estimate to complete. It represents the expected cost required to finish all the remaining project work from this point forward. It excludes the already incurred cost and focuses solely on the future expenditure. This is based on the past performance, and this approach assumes that the future performance will mirror the past performance. Another parameter is to complete performance index. This is also a crucial metric in earned value management that helps project managers access the cost efficiency required to complete a project within the specified budget. TCPI is a forecasting tool that indicates the cost performance needed on the remaining work to achieve a particular financial goal, such as an original budget at the completion or a revised estimate at completion. It answers the questions of how efficiently must we use our remaining resources to meet our financial objectives. ETC is nothing but a difference between the project budget and the actual cost. TCPI is BAC minus EV divided by BAC minus actual cost. It can also be calculated by using the other formula, which is BAC minus EV by EAC minus AC. TCPI can be calculated based on BAC or EAC. These are two types of calculation of TCPI. The values may also differ. Say, to lay a brick, you need 10,000 rupees. The planned value of this will be 10,000 into 10 for laying 10 bricks. But for laying, the value is currently 9,000. Then the earned value will be 9,000 into 10, that is 90,000. But when we laid the brick, we understood that we need 11 bricks, not 10. Then the actual value is 9,000 into 11, that is 99,000. So this is a simple logic of earned value management. These numbers form a very dynamic tool for analyzing project performance. Now, what is the output of monitoring and control? Variance. We can have schedule variance or a cost variance. which is the difference between the planned and the actual values. It can be positive or negative. Another output of monitoring and control is corrections. We can identify the corrections where and what we need to do. Corrections can be a short term action. So basically, we can understand the corrective actions, the correction actions. Sorry. Uh, Correction actions are the short term actions. Another thing is we can find out the containment action. The containment action to prevent the spread of an issue from happening or spreading throughout the project. That is an immediate action. Monitoring and control also helps us to find the corrective action required. It is a medium term action. And monitoring and control also helps us find the preventive action. It suggests to us about the changes required in schedule, budget, sequencing, and for other logical relationship between the activities. Variances can force or lead us to corrective actions, corrections, containment, or preventive action. Can also lead us to changes.